But before you can even start using filters, you need to first of all decide what kind of filter fitting you're going to invest in. Are you going to go for the traditional screw-on filters? Or are you going to go for a slotting filter system, which attaches to your lens using something like that? Now side by side you can see the difference. One's a lot smaller, one attaches directly to the lens, the other one is larger, and it has to use an adapter to work. The question is which one's better? Ultimately, the slotting system is more flexible, but you may well find that you can get away with the screw-in filter system, which is, as I say, a lot smaller, which means it takes up less space. But it does have disadvantages, which you will see later. Whether you're using a slotting filter or a screw-in filter, you're going to need to find a way to attach it to your lens. Now every lens has a filter thread on the front, unless you've bought an extreme wide angle, which in that case you may have to find another way of doing it. And what you have to do, if you're using the slotting system, is find an adapter ring that will adapt to your slotting filter to your lens. If you're using a screw-in filter, you have to use something called a step-up or step-down ring. Now the problem with this is if you've bought a 77mm thread filter, which is a very common size, and then in the future buy an extreme wide angle lens, well by extreme I mean like an ultra wide, say 16 to 35, something like that, which is probably going to be 82mm, all of a sudden you can't use your 77mm, because if you're using a filter to adapt, the filter is actually going to be too small for the lens. It may fit, but you're going to see it visibly around the edge of the frame. With the slotting system, all you do is buy an 82mm adapter ring, and then you're good to go. So at this point, before you even start using filters and you're just considering buying them, consider the size you should actually buy. The slotting filter offers flexibility, simply because you can buy a 100mm size filter, which is the width, so that's 100mm, which then, using pretty much any adapter ring, you can attach to your lens. So if you do buy a wide angle, you're good to go, just buy a new adapter ring. Again, with a screw-in filter, you would probably be better off actually investing in an 82mm filter size and using an adapter ring so you can actually attach it to your lens, even if you're using 77mm, and then if you do buy a wide angle in the future, you can just attach it. But as a golden rule, just buy the largest filters you can afford, because then you're future-proofing yourself for the future. And whilst it may mean a more expensive outlay in the first place, it will ultimately save you money. Now the scene behind me is classic polarisation territory. I'm shooting at 90 degrees to the sun, we've got lots of nice fluffy clouds and we've got a nice blue sky behind. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch it to the live view and I'm going to take the shot without the filter on. So then I'm going to attach the filter and I'm going to show you the actual difference it makes through the live view of the camera. Okay, so that's the shot without the polarizer. I'm now going to screw the polarizing filter on. Just like that. And then what you need to do is you need to adjust the polarizer by turning the front element and looking at the difference it actually makes to your shot. Now I'm going to turn it all the way around so you can actually see. So you see there's hardly any polarisation there, bring it back a bit. So you adjust it to taste and then you just fire away and this is the shot. And that's the polarising filter in a nutshell. It's an incredibly flexible little filter. It's great when you've got nice blue skies and you look some clouds flying around. Brilliant, just has that little bit of a pop. It gives your photos a three-dimensional look. It's also good on overcast days in woodland. You can use it to cut through reflections. If you've got wet leaves, it will cut through the water on the leaves and give your colours a bit of a natural boost. And it's also great if you're photographing water in general and you want to cut down the reflection. So if you've got a stream or river or a lake, by turning the polarizer, you can actually cut through the reflection a bit and just, again, give that colours a bit more oomph about them. All in all, if I can only take one filter with me, and this happens quite often, I will just take the polarising filter. As you will have seen from the time lapse, the clouds are quite fast moving at the moment, which makes it a perfect subject for long exposure photography. Now the problem is, if you want to do long exposures, your camera's going to hit a certain point where basically as soon as you expose any longer, the image is going to overexpose. So what you need to do is you need to fit a filter. And what I've just fitted is a 10 times filter, which blocks out 10 f-stops of light. Now what that's enabled me to do is actually take a shot, which is 1 minute long. And by doing that, I've actually effectively captured the movement of the clouds as it passes over these rocks, which is quite a creative process. And the beauty is that you can take 3 or 4 shots and not one of them will probably be the same. This sort of technique is not possible without filters. You could theoretically take lots of shorter exposures and then blend them, but it's going to involve a lot of Photoshop work. And really something very rewarding about just fitting a filter, pressing the button, leaving it for a minute and then seeing the final result. So far I've used a 10 times neutral density filter and I've used a polarizing filter, and both of these have been screw-in filters. But the next filter I'm going to use actually really needs to be a slot-in filter, because as a screw-in filter it's not really very flexible, and that of course is the neutral density graduated filter. So I've managed to just take a quick shot of these rocks. At the time they were totally in the shade, but the light out in the distance was really nice. It was breaking lovely. Now I actually quite like the rocks being in the shade. It's sort of brought out the details a bit more. So here was the problem. My rocks were really dark, so if I exposed for the rocks, the sky just went totally washed out, and I'll show that image now. And I had to try and sort this out. If I'd exposed for the sky, these rocks would have been way too dark. So I fitted this filter holder with a 3-stop neutral density graduated filter in place. And what I did is I moved the filter up and down until it was on the right place, covering the brighter areas of the frame, and then I took the shot. And what that did was magically balance it all out, and immediately the photo had far more impact. Now these filters come in different strengths. You get 1 stop, 2 stop, 3 stops, 4 stops, and they also come in different graduations. This is what you call a hard graduation. So what that effectively means is, because how these filters work is one half of the filter is clear, the other half has the neutral density layer on it. You can push it up and down into the right place over your frame to put it over the pot that actually needs the light holding back. Now can you see why a screw-in filter wouldn't work for this? Because if you use a screw-in filter, basically the graduation's in one place in the middle, which is great if your horizon's in the middle, but let's face it, if you're following the rule of thirds, a lot of the time your horizon's going to be up on a third or down, or basically 2/3. So you know, being in the middle is not ideal. So this is a hard graduation, which means it's an extreme change from the clear to the graduated part. Now this one is a soft graduation, and I'm not sure if you can see that, but basically that's a very soft graduation. So it's a gentle change from the neutral density part to the clear part. This one's a 2-stop neutral density, and this one is a 3-stop hard. Honestly, that's a really good combination to have. If you're photographing sunrise, for example, you may find you need more than 3 stops, but you can combine the 2 filters in the holder, and that will give you 5 stops. But the problem is, it just doesn't work as a screw-in filter. So for that reason, if you're planning to use neutral density graduated filters, you pretty much have to use a slot-in filter system. Now, personally, I don't use these filters that much anymore. I used to use them religiously, but with modern cameras and better sensor technology, I'm finding I can actually pull back a lot of the exposures during the post-processing stage. So by using the highlight and the shadow sliders, I can actually compensate quite a lot. So they're not as essential as they used to be, but believe me, if you're in a situation where the difference is so extreme, the best way of doing it is with graduated filters. And of course, it's a bit like the long exposure. There's something very rewarding about actually fitting these filters and actually getting it right in camera. But as I said, if you're going to get these, then really do consider a slot system. I hope you've enjoyed this short introduction to using filters for landscape photography. As you can see, there's a lot of benefits to using them, and I do really recommend that every photographer has some filters in the bag, even if it's just a polarizing filter. A lot of the results from using filters can actually now be done digitally in post-production, with the exception of the polarizing filter. But really, as I've said a couple of times so far on this video, there's something so very rewarding about doing it in camera and having minimal post-processing when you get back. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, please consider giving it a thumbs up and maybe subscribe to the channel, and hopefully I'll see you next week for another video.